Great. Well, thank you, Vincenzo, and welcome. This is a very exciting evening because you're going to get to do some public speaking too. But we'll do it in a way that's not confronting, and we'll do it in a way that's very slow build so that it gets easier and easier. And I think you would have all received little blue cards. Anyone not received a little blue card from me? It's got the 6 impact points on there. Something you can put in your purse or your wallet. And anytime you have to get up and give some type of public presentation, this is a very useful prompt to remember, oh yeah, these are some things I should be doing. So we're going to go through some of the basics and then we're going to have some practice tonight. So one of the things we find interesting is that it's not crowded at the top of the pyramid of giving presentations or talks. This is a study of 200 vice presidents in the States, and they were asked, well, what sort of presentations are you seeing and what do you think about them? And as you see here, most people thought the presentations put them to sleep or just dead boring. Only 3% of the presentations that they were listening to were any good. So if you look at it from this angle, wow, it's not very crowded at the top. It's not like you're competing with a lot of people to get to the top of the pyramid here. And the basic problem is people are not trained and people are not practicing enough. So with a little bit of training and practice, you can certainly elevate yourself right up that scale. We're going to cover delivering with confidence, a little bit work on that. Purpose and structure, because those fundamentals make a big difference to how we prepare for what we're doing. Our openings and closings is going to be very important. First impression, last impression, we want to get that nailed down. And then also how to bring evidence in to give ourselves more credibility with our audience. So why be an effective presenter? So maybe it might work in pairs or it might work in triads, in threes, but find somebody next to you and have a little discussion now about why you think it's probably going to be helpful to be an effective presenter. Find a partner and have a discussion. Go. Okay, let's stop it there and see how far you got. How about you guys in the front here? What are some reasons you think we should become effective presenters?
Because we want to tell the, easy to make a point to what we want to tell.
Okay, so being clear and persuasive in our communication, that certainly helps, yeah. I'll come to you guys in a moment. How about over here?
One of the things I was talking about is I just feel that the older I get, the more opportunity or the more I get pushed into trying or talking in front of groups of people,
Yep.
whether it be work-wise or socially, like a best man speech at a wedding. And before these things, I always spend weeks worrying about it and stressing about it because I know I'm bad. And then I do it and I quite enjoy it, and then afterwards I always regret the things I forgot to do or I missed or things people didn't understand, stuff like that.
So what you're saying is we socially and work-wise, as we go through our careers, get called upon to speak, be it to talk to our teams or to a bigger group or, as you say, weddings. So there's nothing worse than that fear of having to get up and talk in front of people when you're not prepared, you're not confident, and it's a dread, isn't it? And so for a lot of people that's very terrifying. And so the occasions will come, they will come. So did you get a chance to talk about anything here? Yeah?
Sales in front of customers, selling
Yeah.
selling a product, and also for getting your idea across.
Getting your idea
selling
across
your
and
idea.
in the sales area. Who here is in sales? Well, here's the good news. We're all in sales. If you suggest lunch, that's a sale. If you suggest, let's go and have a drink after work, that's a sale. If you suggest, let's do this project, that's a sale. We think of sales in a very narrow band, but in fact, we are constantly selling to each other our ideas, our suggestions, our leadership all the time. But we don't necessarily see it like that, but there is that aspect of persuasion power to get people to come with you on whatever it is you want them to do. So how about you guys out here? Brock, what did you guys come up with?
Mostly to be get our ideas across. in a clear and concise way.
Clear and concise projection of your ideas. Yep, yep. How about over here? Use a threesome over here. Try it, I think. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Kat, go.
well, I mean, everything we talked about is already put out there, but it's basically we talk about nothing's conviction. Just-
Conviction.
Yes.
Meaning what?
Convince whatever the idea or whatever you're trying to sell.
Uh-huh.
You need to convince that it, when you're especially.
Right. So being persuasive, being convincing, getting people to follow your ideas, agree with you. Yeah, have it in the back. Ladies, what did you come up with?
To get the right idea across.
Okay.
To not use body language to get the wrong communication.
Right. We're actually going to talk a little bit about body language and the words in a moment. That's a very nice point. How about you guys in the back? So, Sam, what did we come up with here?
I don't think anything new other than we really didn't want to bore people.
Didn't want to bore people. Yeah, you'd like to be remembered as an interesting speaker, or you gave a good talk. People say, oh, it was great to listen to Vincenzo or Gregory or whatever, in that sense. Yeah, Vincenzo.
I always say, with the hands we are limited by time and resource, but with the words you can move a million people.
Yeah, so yes, that's true. Hands can only do so much, but words can move a lot of people. Yeah, we're very powerful. So here's another question. And I'm just going to ask you to think about this, so I'm going to draw your ideas. What do you think are some qualities of outstanding presenters and presentations? As you saw before, only 3% of that survey of those 200 vice presidents in America thought that the presentations were stimulating. So basically 97% were duds. So if we think about what's a stimulating or an effective presentation, outstanding presentation, what things come to our mind? We talked already about persuasion, clarity, yeah, and probably congruency in terms of the body language and what we're saying. What else do you think comes up? Yeah.
Ability to connect with the audience.
That's right. Build some rapport with an audience. Yeah, that's good.
I think one of the big things is credibility. If you, even especially in an internal meeting, if you give a speech to your company, and you've got, it goes along with clarity. But if you don't have clarity of thought and you can't put it into a presentation that resonates with people, your credibility is going to sink. And that's just not just with customers; it goes straight across for everyone.
Right. So credibility and the capacity to take an idea or a series of ideas, package it up in a way that's going to resonate with an audience. They can follow it very clearly, and they're convinced of what you say. Anything else? Any other qualities? Yeah.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm, yeah. We're going to show a little bit about that in a moment too. That's a very good point, because enthusiasm sells too, doesn't it? What else? Yeah, Sam.
You inspire people?
Inspire people, yeah. That's right. You can move a lot of people. And Vincenzo said before, words can move lots and lots of people. Very powerful. All right. Very nice. So one of the things that we bump up against as presenters is a misconception about presentations. And particularly people in technical fields, engineering, accounting, law, architecture, these types of very technical fields, medicine, etc. Often we hear, well, people don't care about me being a good speaker. They're really here for the knowledge. They're here for the information. Okay. That is actually a big misconception. In fact, the critical thing is not so much knowledge, it's skill and attitude. When they look at success factors, this is about 15%. And these two, skill and attitude, are 85% of our success. Because no matter how much knowledge you've got, if you don't know how to apply it through your skill, it doesn't go anywhere. No matter how much knowledge you've got, if you're an incredibly negative person, it's going to be hard to get other people to come with you. So attitude, or if you don't like people, that's a tough one too. One of the ironies for me in life is meeting people in businesses like diplomacy. I used to be a diplomat. A lot of diplomats are incredibly undiplomatic. A lot of diplomats don't like people, HR is another one too. It's always astonishing for me to meet people in HR industry who don't like people. I never quite work out how they get into those jobs, but you get these mismatches. So we should not assume, just because we have a lot of knowledge, about our subject area, that is sufficient to not apply ourselves to take that knowledge and package it up and present it in a way that's incredibly powerful and resonates with an audience. Now, this is very interesting. Albert Mehrabian, a UCLA professor, did a very long study of how people understand messages. Now, he found something very interesting. Between the vocal part, what we say, 7% people got it. Only 7%. They were actually hearing the words. 55% were going on what they saw in front of them. Dress, body language. And then 38% on voice, how we sound. When, and this is back to your point before, when we're incongruent. Incongruent here means what I'm saying and the words in the way I say it are not matching up. Okay. Let me give a demonstration. Vincenzo, you can stay right there, but can I use you for this demonstration? Is that okay? Vincenzo is my staff member. Okay? He's my staff member. So I'm talking to Vincenzo. This is what I say to Vincenzo. Vincenzo, I want to see you in my office in 5 minutes. I've got some good news for you.
No problem.
Now, when I said that to Vincenzo, what was your impression? Was Vincenzo in trouble? Who thought Vincenzo was in trouble?
Sounds like my mother.
Precisely. But what did I say? I said, Vincenzo, I want to see you in my office in 5 minutes. I have some good news for you. That's what I said. Now, my words, that 7%, did not reach you. Because my body language was angry, my voice was angry and loud. So, this is a quick demonstration. The words alone are not sufficient to sell the message if the way you are delivering the words does not match up with the content of the words. So if you are someone who's leading a team and you are talking about the bright future and you deliver that talk in a very flat, uninspired, unenthusiastic manner, no one is going to hear it. Well, maybe 7% of people will hear it. Everyone's going to go by your tone and your body language. So what it means is when we're presenting, if we're saying something, make sure that the body language and the voice matches the words. So if it's something that's unhappy, don't smile. They don't match up. If it's something that's happy, smile. Facial expression is very powerful. We'll come to that a little bit later too. So one of the key things here with anything, as you can imagine, is preparation. The problem is we don't prepare. When people are asked to do a presentation, what do? They go straight to PowerPoint or some equivalent software, and they spend the vast majority, probably 99% of their time, putting stuff, words or graphs or whatever, on the PowerPoint slide. All the time is devoted to that production. But the PowerPoint slides are only a prop, a tool to us as the speaker. Our faces have got so much more animation, so much more selling power than a slide. It's just not even comparable. So the preparation gets all skewed to the wrong thing. We're not practicing our presentation before we give it, so we become more confident. And that's where people become fearful, they're worried about how it's going to go, because they haven't actually practiced, haven't prepared properly. And also assessing the audience. Whenever you're asked to speak, first thing, you ask the organisers, who am I speaking to? Who is in the audience? What's the age range? What's the experience range? What's the gender mix? How knowledgeable are they? You need to know those things, because if you're talking down at a very basic level to a very high level audience, they're going to disconnect. If you're speaking at a very high level to an audience who don't have great knowledge, you're going to disconnect. So you've got to match right level for the audience. And tonight, when Brian was here before, I spoke to Brian today. I said, okay, Brian, how many people we got coming and who are they? So he gave me the rundown of everybody basically who's in the room. A lot of you already know. But that helps me to understand, okay, where do I need to arrange my presentation to suit this particular audience? And so do that analysis. And then we often, basically, we get locked into our own inadequacies. I'm not a good speaker, I'm not confident, so it's all negative feedback to ourselves, right? So you neglect the strengths you have. You've got knowledge, you've got information, you've got capacity, but you concentrate on the downside, not the upside. And then the way we communicate, even if we are nervous, we can communicate confidence and competence. There's a terrible, terrible meltdown. You go and search it on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Michael Bay, B-A-Y, Samsung presentation. And you'll see the director of all of those, what are those movies?
Transform.
That's right, Transformer movies, right? The director. He's been asked to come to a Samsung presentation with this new curved TV they're releasing. Big audience, and he comes out. The teleprompters go down in about 1.5 minutes into his speech. And he says, oh, prompter's gone down. Well, I'll just wing it. He wings it for about 15 seconds. And then he just suddenly, without saying anything, he turns like that, body language just like that, and walks off the stage. It was just the biggest meltdown you've ever seen. Now, who knew what Michael Bay was going to say? Michael Bay and the guy on the stage who was the MC. They're the only two people in the audience who knew that. He could have talked about anything, and the audience would never have known that wasn't part of the script if the teleprompters went down. But he didn't project that confidence. So what I'm saying is, even if we completely muck it up, only you know. So you can project confidence even though you may not have it, and the audience will relate to it. But how do we start a speech in Japan? What's the classic way of starting a speech in Japan? You apologize. If you ever go to in Japanese, you ever go to a speech, or they do it in English, they do the same thing. First thing they do is apologize. Oh, I'm a terrible public speaker. Oh, I didn't have much time to prepare this. I'm not an expert in this area. That's a cultural thing in Japan. But if you're in the audience, that's like, oh, this is going to be bad. Right? So you're preconditioning your audience for a negative experience. So even if you're not prepared, even if you're not a great speaker, even if you're feeling terrible, even if you kick the cat on the way to work in the morning, doesn't matter. Project confidence and the audience will relate to that. And the confidence comes with that, as you said before, credibility. And then helping the audience relax. So if we're really stiff and nervous, we generate that tension to the audience and they feel it too. So being able to be appearing relaxed, even if you don't feel relaxed, is good. Now, just as a side note, you have a beautiful blue shirt on there.
Thank you.
And I would never wear that colour or any colour shirt when I'm presenting. Because if I'm nervous, I tend to, as a man anyway, I tend to perspire a lot. And often when you're speaking, you're under bright lights or it's quite warm up on the stage and it gets quite hot. Or if you're doing a lot of speaking, you're generating a lot of energy and you heat up. So that would be a two-tone shirt in about 15 minutes, you know. Part would be very dark blue and part would be light blue. And then the audience sees that. They see that you're under tension, you're sweating, right? So little tricks like you wear a white shirt and it can't tell. It's not, I definitely would never take my jacket off during a speech because I can tell you this is going to show a lot of sweat and a lot of heat because when you speak you generate these things. So little things like that, you hide that from the audience. You hide that tension as much as you can. I saw a terrific example of someone unable to do that once. It was a New Year function, IT industry, big event. He was a senior level public servant representing his boss. at this industry-wide event. And there was a mic stand on top of a podium. And this gentleman obviously had a lot of fear and tension, but he had to give his boss a speech anyway. And he was perspiring. And the perspiration was running down to his chin and pooling there before it dropped onto the microphone. Right throughout the speech. Boom, every time. Poor guy, he was dying. But he wasn't able to mask it. So sometimes, yes, we will feel tension, our body will react chemically, and things like that will happen. But try not to show it. Be careful about things will indicate that. Move the mic stand if it's dropping that hard, right? So our audience will then relax and it'll make our job easier. Now, fear, we can look at it a couple of different ways. Fear is natural. It shows you're not a robot, you're a human being. We're all vulnerable. There's nobody, generally speaking, in an audience who's going to say, well, if that was me out there, I wouldn't be like that. Everybody's going to be nervous up here. We're all the same, basically. But that energy, that fight or flight energy, gives us power to speak. So the chemicals are racing through the body to drive your speech and your capacity to communicate that enthusiasm. It shows that you're taking this seriously. You're not just being flippant. And I did go to a speech a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say the gentleman's name, but he's a very well-known guy, and I'd never heard him speak. And I thought, wow, this would be great. I want to hear this guy speak. But he came and he spoke. He had no enthusiasm. I don't know why he gave that speech. But he had absolutely no fear, but no enthusiasm either. It was a very, I don't care about the audience type of speech. It was just dreadful. So in a way, when you have a little bit of tension, nervousness, it shows, you're really doing your best here against the odds. It shows you're trying, want to make a good impression, and you're looking for a good outcome. Like him, he didn't care about the audience. It was a really dreadful, dreadful experience, I've got to tell you. So, what are some ways you think we can minimize fear? In your pairs or triads again, come up with some ideas. What can we do to minimize fear? Go for it. Okay, so how do we go? What do we come up with? How about you guys over here? What did you come up with?
We came up with two things mainly. Preparation
Preparation,
and
yes.
alcohol.
Alcohol for the audience or for you?
For us. Everybody. Both, yeah, pretty much both.
Both, okay. Well, that's a novel idea, the alcohol part. Anyone else have an idea? How about you guys then?
We said to try and not to think about it too much.
Okay, don't think about it too much, don't over-engineer it, don't stress yourself too much, be relaxed about it, yeah. How about down the back here?
Practice.
Sorry?
Practice.
Practice, okay, yeah.
Preparation.
And?
Preparation.
Practice and preparation, yeah, nice. How about in the back here?
Just kind of covered it.
Pretty much the same? Yeah, Kat.
One of the things I do is, I used to think about myself, my performance,
Yep.
how I'm going to be looked at,
Yep.
whether it's going to be successful or not.
Yeah.
Then one time, I this is after I went to Buddhist temple actually, I started thinking about the audience. Why am I doing this thing for? It's for them.
Yeah.
So if I focused on them, did they really get what I said for their sake?
Mm-hmm.
When I started thinking about their sake, that's when I started.
So you took the focus off yourself
Right, but
and you
you-
flipped it and focused on your audience.
Right.
And doing your best for your audience. That's a very nice point. That's a very nice point. In fact, that's a good insight because that's right. When we're nervous, who are we worried about? Ourselves. Who have we forgotten about? The audience, right? When you forget about yourself, this is very Zen-like actually. I was at a Zen temple. It's a bit like that. In a Zen temple, you forget about yourself and you concentrate on the broader world. It's the same good analogy for speaking. When you forget about yourself and concentrate on your audience, then it works. And you'll notice tonight, when I'm talking to you, I'm making eye contact with all of you. As I speak, I will engage you and speak to you directly, one-on-one. I'm not looking at that painting at the back there. I'm not looking at the floor. I'm looking at you. I'm trying to speak to you individually, one-on-one. Right? And that's because I'm focused on my audience, not focused on me. That's a very good
That's a
insight.
question on that point. I don't look at people's eyes because that screws me up. I look just over the top of their head, so it looks like I'm looking at them. Is that not? Is it? Cause
That's fine, but I think you can look over the top of the head, but looking at people's eyes, it doesn't have to be long. On that little blue card, it says 6 seconds. The reason for that is, if it's 1 or 2 seconds, it tends to be rather fleeting. It doesn't connect much. If I look at you and I keep looking at you and I keep staring at you and I keep staring at you, you're thinking axe murderer, right? So 6 seconds is not too intrusive. So you're not killing yourself or killing them, but you are making the connection with people. What else did you come up with? Overcoming fear. Got some good points there. Any additional points? Made a little list here, a few other things that sort of come up, and you've nailed quite a few of them. Don't memorize your speech. Know what you want to talk about, but don't memorize, because that'll make you really nervous. You're going to hope that you put the whole thing in your head and away you go, and you won't have it in your head. And then when it breaks down, you break down. So don't kill yourself by trying to memorize, but just know what you want to talk about. In fact, I was attending a course at Harvard Business School. It was one of those pit style arrangements. The sort of seats go up and the professor's down here with sort of amazingly blackboards everywhere. And behind us there was about 10 words written on a chart that he could see. And for 3 hours he lectured to those 10 words. That was his prompt about what comes next, because he knew his subject. But he needed, that's the order I need to keep it. I'll talk about this, and then I'll talk about this, and then I'll talk about that. Same thing. You don't need to have everything written down. You've got a number of points you want to talk to. Just here's the order of the points. And often the slides give us that point format to follow. Makes it easy. Let me see.
Can I ask a question on that too?
Yeah.
So when you're preparing for the speech and you've got, say, 10 words and 10 bullet points, if he's speaking for 3 hours, if you divide 3 hours divided by 10 points, you're looking at a large chunk of time for each of those points. So within each of those points, you've got to keep your thoughts organized as well. Which probably has subheaders and subpoints and this, that, and the other thing. So how would you practice something that's that long with?
Well, I think for any of us, the opportunities to speak for 3 hours for a start would be pretty limited. He's a professor doing a lecture, so that's probably in his world, that's probably about right. But for us in business, I can't imagine talking to anybody in that format for 3 hours. So it's probably going to be a bit shorter, and it's probably going to be less points. So I think the complexity gets easier. In his case, he's a Harvard Business School professor. He's been doing this a long time. So he probably started with a lot more than 10 points. And over time, he's boiled it down to those single words that are whole chapters for him in what he's presenting. Because he would repetitiously present that same information every time, every class, year after year after year, basically. Which is a little bit different. In business, we don't tend to get that opportunity to repeat. We're going to do it once, and that's probably it. So I think the complexity is a bit different. But long as you've got some knowledge of where you're going, and it might be the slides give you that order, or it might be just some notes. What we're getting at is don't think you've got to write the whole thing out, memorize it, or read it. You don't need to do that. The other thing is, we say in Dale Carnegie, there are 3 E's. You know, you've earned the right to speak because you have done the preparation. You have the knowledge, you know. So you've earned the right, you've got the eagerness to share. As you talked before, Kat, you want to give to the audience, you know. You want to share some good knowledge, help people. Right? So that helps you too in terms of being confident. And the other one is excited about the topic. So generally speaking, unless it's a very rare occasion, having to talk about something boring is a bit tough. But sometimes that comes up. You have to give somebody else a speech. I was a Consul General for Australia in Osaka, and the Australian ambassador could not attend that speech. I had to give his speech. It was a speech I gave in Japanese. So I've got a text I have to follow because I have to give the ambassador's speech word for word. I can't ad-lib. I can't take bits out that I thought were boring and improve it. I have to give it exactly. That was the most excruciating, painful public speech I've ever given in my entire life. Just about killed me. Because there was no flexibility about that. And I had to read the damn thing as well. It just killed me. So I was not excited about that, but I did my best to make it lively. You know, I try to, again, think about the audience. But generally speaking, we're excited about the topic because we have some knowledge about it, we have some background, some experience, we want to help people. So that those 3 E's give us confidence to become a presenter. And I think, you know, one of the other things too there is about fear. None of you mentioned though is the feeling in your stomach when you're nervous. We say in English, you know, you have butterflies, you know, floating around in your stomach. The reason for that is when we are in that fight or flight chemical mode, the brain says, right, I've got to either run away or fight and stand my ground. I'm going to need to pump blood to the major limbs, legs, arms, chest, shoulders, this area. Okay. I'm going to take the blood away from the organs. Where are your organs located? Usually around here. So I'm not going to be digesting things. The blood flow to the stomach area stops basically, and it goes to the major muscle groups. That's why we get that strange feeling in the tummy. So when you realize that, oh, it's just the blood relocating for the fight or flight, that's where that funny feeling is. It's not such a big deal. You realize, oh, okay, that's what's going on. And just keep presenting, right? So that feeling of fear is a chemical reaction. The point is, feeling the fear is okay, but it's being able to go beyond the fear and keep presenting, because only you know that you're nervous. Only you know that you're nervous. If you don't tell the audience, you don't show the audience, generally speaking, they're not going to know. In fact, you know what? They don't care. This is the brilliant insight. They don't care. What they care about is this going to be useful? Is this going to be interesting? Am I going to get something out of this? That's all they care about. Your nervousness, they don't care. It's a mildly interesting thing to them to some extent. Oh, look at that, they're nervous. But apart from that, they don't care. So relax, you know. If you're showing nervousness, try and mask it a little bit. Make life a bit easier for yourself. And you've come up with this already. I thought you did a nice job. This is your confidence area. That's your fear area. So the way to make sure that we're getting into this confidence area and reduce the fear is we do, first of all, audience assessment. Clearly, who am I speaking to? What level do I need to make this speech? What's going to be interesting content for this audience? And it's a bit hard to read because there's lights here, but the purpose and the structure. There are different types of speeches we give. I'll come to those in a moment. And how should I structure it? How will I open? Now, this is tricky because anytime we give a talk inside the company, in a meeting, or this type of format, the audience are just absolutely crammed full of stuff already. And you've got to get in there with your stuff. Not easy. So the opening has to really grab people's attention. And then the closing, what's the last impression? What's the last thing you're going to remember about you after you've finished? You want to make sure that's a very strong final impression too. So you prepare for that. You don't just turn up. You actually think, how am I going to open? How am I going to finish it off? You prepare that. And then the context and the evidence, or content and evidence. So you make some point, add some evidence to it, because you might say it, but how do we know that's true? If you say it and you back it up with evidence, it's more convincing, it's more clear, it's easy to follow, it's more credible, as you said before. And then, of course, practice. And this is where, if you're going to give a talk, practice, practice, practice. I was asked to give the closing speech at a Dale Carnegie conference in Ho Chi Minh City. And you know, in hotels at night, if you sort of turn the lights out, the windows become like a mirror. You can actually see your own reflection. So I practiced that closing 5 to 10 minute speech. I think it was probably more like 8 minutes, I think, when I think back. I practiced that probably 10 times facing that mirror. So I could see myself, I could see the gestures, I could see the animation of my face over it. And before I even got to Vietnam, I'd been practicing it in Japan. But the night before, I was working on, and I do a lot of public speaking. But I don't put it to chance. This is something I'm practicing to make sure it works. And I forgot the order for one bit, you know. I had it nicely laid out, and then I realized, oh my God, I've mixed up the order. But only I knew that. Only I knew I'd mixed up the order. So I didn't say, oh no, I mixed up the order, sorry. I just carried on. And no one in the audience had a clue that the order was confused for that particular section. I just picked it up and kept on going. So when you've practiced and things don't go according to how you'd like it to go, you still can keep going because you know where you're going with it. In this case, there was no PowerPoint. It was just straight to the audience, no notes, just like this. So, you know, no guidance from the PowerPoint preparation. So, who's the audience? What am I trying to do here? How will I open? What are the major points I'm going to make? What's some ideas and evidence to back up those major points, and how will I close? That's a very basic plan. And it's not a complex plan. This is a very, very simple plan. And if you work on those things, then life gets very easy. So, my audience, as I said before, what level of knowledge do they have? What's their expertise like? Experience? Do they have any biases? Now, we were recently training a very big sporting company, and we were training their marketing team. Because every year the marketing team has to get together with the sales team. The sales team's huge. And they have to introduce to the sales team what they've got to sell to their buyers. Well, the sales team have a lot of bias. Marketing don't know what they're doing. Tash nodding his head over there, right? Being in the marketing department. They always get it wrong, and we have to sell this stuff to the clients. It's so hard. So the audience has automatically got a bias. So if you're in that team who's presenting to that skeptical sales group, then you've got to know that. So you're going to present in a way to overcome that bias. If you find that people have got a different opinion to you, then you've got to find a way to be persuasive with them. And then, what do they need versus what they want? Okay, need and want are not the same thing. And then finally, what are the goals for this presentation? Am I trying to persuade people to do something, take some action, allocate money to a particular project, to get behind me on a team, form a new team? Where am I going with this? Right? So, once you understand the purpose, then you get the structure and the goals going, get your thoughts logically laid out, then logical progression of ideas. So again, we can follow it. We can follow it on the way through. And one of the, I forget what number it is on, maybe number 6 on your little blue card there, I think it says pause. Is it number 6 says pause there, or maybe number 5? What is that? 5 is pause? Pause is good because when we start speaking, it allows the audience to catch up with the progression of where we're going. But sometimes when we're a bit nervous, when we're speaking, we speed up and we start clipping along. Ideas are running over each other and the audience gets a bit lost. So pauses are helpful when you're getting through that logical progression of ideas for the audience to be clear and absorb the information. So what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to convince this audience to do something? Persuade them to do something? Are we just informing them? Just giving them some new information, here's the latest regulations, here's the latest market report, here's the directive from headquarters, or whatever it might be. Which is it? Are we trying to motivate them to take action, become more enthusiastic, become more engaged about whatever it is we're after, or is it just purely for entertainment? Depending on what your objective is, the speech will be entirely different. But it's very good to start with what is the objective. What am I trying to do here? Is it make people happy, have fun, be humorous, whatever? Is it to actually get them to do something? Or just to tell them something? Or persuade them? Determine that first. That's a very critical thing. This is a very basic structure. When I was young, we were told, you tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you tell them. Then you tell them what you told them. I mean, we've probably all heard that, right? It's not a bad structure. Except that we changed it a little bit. Break through all that mental clutter. with a strong opening, grab their attention, which is not so easy, by the way. Then you have the content, which are key points, with evidence. So point, evidence, point, evidence, point, evidence, all the way through. Then you close it out in a very memorable way that the key things are ringing in your audience's ears. Now, it's not on this chart, but normally here, you go into question and answer. Okay? Tonight we won't deal with question and answers, not enough time. But here's the key thing. After you do Q&A, do another close. Okay, you've closed once, open up for questions, come back again and close it again. Why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just say, well, thank you for your questions, good evening, thank you for coming, and finish? Why would we go back after Q&A and close it out? What do you think?
To re-emphasize the point.
Yeah, to reinforce the points. Because in Q&A, do the questions go all over the place? Yeah. Sometimes the questions got nothing to do with what you're talking about. So suddenly the audience is left with a completely random conversation about nothing that you were trying to get across. So you've lost control of the messaging. You can't control the questions, but you can control the ending. So the questions will take you anywhere. That's okay. But come back at the end and repeat the close. So you're always in control of the total product of that evening, or that occasion, I should say. All right, so we want major points, grab the attention with the opening, evidence, close with a lasting impression. That's all good. Here's some openings. These are just a few. There are many, 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 but these are just a few. The first one is something like, oh my, wow, I didn't know that. Something that's quite new information. Something people hadn't heard before. They go, oh, really? Or a puzzle, something that's going to get them thinking. An event could be you're relating a story about something that happened. Or no nonsense is just straight into it. Tonight I'm going to talk about blah, 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 and away you go. So there are some openings. So have a look at this and now start thinking. Okay, in a minute you're going to have a chance to practice. You're going to have to think of an opening. You'll design the opening in a minute, but let's think about, okay, something that might surprise people, some information, something that might get them really thinking about what's a solution. Tell a little story about something that happened, or just, how I will start this talk. That's the openings, right? So, when we talk about evidence, we have a thing that evidence defeats anxiety. And here's the acronym in English, defeats. So, evidence might be a demonstration of something. Like I was talking before, I'm making eye contact with you as I speak to you. I'm altering my voice tone while I'm doing this to have the interest, keep the interest. I'm demonstrating those things. Could be an example of something that happened. It could be some relevant facts. It might be actually something you can show people. It could be an analogy. An analogy is connecting two things which are not normally connected to make a point that's more clear to understand. For example, if you've got something rather complex, sometimes people can't get it. So you might pick something that's quite simple and relate the two things together. I think a simple example. Giving a presentation is like flying a plane. Now, I'm using an analogy. Presenting and flying a plane. There's no necessary normal connection between flying a plane and giving a presentation, right? So those things are not connected. Now, in the analogy, I'm going to connect them. Giving a presentation is like flying a plane. Takeoff and landing are the most statistically dangerous periods in a plane's flight. In the same way, when we're presenting, our opening has to grab the attention of a skeptical, very mind-cluttered audience before we can give them the right points for our presentation. And the ending, like the landing, should be something that remains with the audience after we've stopped speaking because we've convinced them of what we've said. So that's why a presentation is like flying a plane. See? I've taken an analogy to take two things and connect them to make it very simple to understand. So that idea of takeoff and landing, we all know, we all fly, we know. That's the danger zone and that's the danger zone. And this bit in the middle is usually pretty good. So you know, presenting, opening, closing, they're important things. Testimonials, this is very powerful too. We're very lucky. If you look on our website, you'll see a nice video there of Warren Buffett. Everyone heard of Warren Buffett? Most successful business person in history, saying, Dale Carnegie training changed my life. It's not a bad testimonial, is it? It's pretty good. You'd like to have that on your website, wouldn't you? We like it on ours, so that's powerful. Or statistics, again, a bit like facts. Numbers help to make things very clear for people. It's very convincing. So they're things, when we talk about evidence, we can draw on. So in a moment, when you design the points you're going to make, think about what might be some evidence to go with them. Okay. And then finally, how do we close it out? So this is close, another acronym here. So we might challenge the audience to do something after the talk. We might go back to the original purpose, whatever that was we were trying to achieve. We might offer some inspiration or some benefit of what we're suggesting. It might just be a summary, or we might exaggerate things to really have impact with an audience. So think about one of these closes for yourself in a moment. You're going to design how to finish it off. All right, so we'll have an opening, we've got our key points, evidence for those key points, and then a final close to wrap it up. Got the idea? We're going to give a 2-minute talk. All right, so it's only 2 minutes, it's not very long. So first of all, think of a topic you can talk about. It might be to inform people about something, it might be to entertain people, all right, it might be to persuade people, as we said before. Okay, it could be to motivate people. You pick a topic. Start with the key points. What are the things I want to say in my talk? What is the key points I want to make? And then think of what's some good evidence to back up what I'm saying. You probably only have room for, in 2 minutes, for probably 2 or 3 key points. Actually, it's not very long. Having thought about that, then think, okay, how am I going to open and how am I going to close? So you design the middle bit first, then go and design how I'm going to launch into this to get people's attention, then design how I'm going to close it out to keep people's attention after the talk's finished. Got the idea? We're going to have some practice on that very, 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 very shortly. Now, I'm thinking that let's see, I might just talk a little bit about these 6 points on your cards here. The 6 sectors I talked a little bit about before, and the 6 sectors there, you may have seen this. Speaker ignores this half of the room and just talks to this group, or only speaks to the front row, or speaks to nobody in particular. But any audience is going to be divided basically into 6 pockets. So I'm Australian, so I don't know anything about baseball, but I've heard of this thing called left field, centre field, and right field, inner field, and outer field. So if you think of that baseball diamond that I'm speaking about there, that's your audience. Here's my left field, centre field, right field, my inner field, and my outer field. The point is 6 pockets there. Make sure you're talking to everybody in those pockets. Now, in a very big audience, and you said before, Greg, about looking over their heads, in a very big audience, 100 people or so, at the distance from which you're speaking, if I'm looking at Masashi-san, one person, probably the 20 people sitting around him all think I'm looking at them too, at that distance, because they can't tell. I'm just so far away on the stage. I'm looking at one person, but 20 people think I'm talking to them. Right? In a small group like this, it's obvious if I'm talking to you or not. But in a big group, it doesn't matter. You just pick one person in those pockets, and you talk to them. So you make sure, and you don't do it by numbers. Vincenzo, go like this around the room. You break it up, random pattern. You notice that I'll look over here, I'll look here, I'll look there, I'll look over there. I break it up so that I'm catching the audience, getting everybody involved. That's what the 6 seconds and 6 sectors means. The second one there, I think is on, what's the second one there? I've got my glasses on.
Face.
Face, right? I said before, This is not the key thing. You know? Let me actually demonstrate that by turning it off. There we go. Boom, right there. This is a prop to you. This is not the main piece, and you are a prop to it. It is a prop to you. Your face has got so much power in it. So when you're enthusiastic, you know, with your voice and your face animation, it shows that enthusiasm. When you're disturbed or puzzled or worried, your face shows that. When you have fear or when you have happiness, your face is so powerful to portray those emotions. Don't miss that chance to use the face. What's the next one?
Voice.
Yeah. Now, how many Japanese native speakers have we got tonight? Right. What happens with Japanese? It's a monotone language. I know it's a monotone language because when I came here in 1979, I went to Georgia University to study Japanese. So I'm learning Japanese and I'm going, "Watashi wa Peking ni ikimasu," like this, you know, like we speak in English all over the place. And the Japanese teacher's going, "No, no, 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 flatto, flatto, flatto." Right? Flatten it out. No variations, any great variations. So Japanese speakers sometimes say, "Oh, well, you know, we're Japanese. We can't do a good job as speakers because the language is a monotone. So automatically Japanese are excused for being boring speakers." No. You have two levers, powerful levers you can use. One is the lever of speed. You can speed it up or you can slow it down. The other lever is power. You can take the power out. Or you can put the power in. Right? So those two levers are enough. Now, in other languages, we've got tonal variation as well. The point is, when you speak in a flat, consistent monotone, you kill your audience, put them all to sleep, straight away. So even if you don't have that tonal variation like English, then you have the opportunity to vary power and speed, which you'll find will work for you. What's the next one?
Gestures.
Yeah, gestures. So I say they're 15 seconds. Why 15 seconds? Why do you think? Why don't I just say, 30 seconds or, 5 seconds or whatever? What do you think?
People will be focusing on the gestures.
You'll notice, I've been holding this now for about 20 seconds, that after about 15 seconds, the hand gesture power dies. And it just becomes plain annoying. Right? So it's a bit like a faucet on a tap. You turn the gestures on, and then you turn them off. You bring it up, and then you put it away. You tell someone something, and then you relax it. So it's on, off, rather than it's permanently on or permanently off. So if you're an Australian, very typically in Australia, a guy, you're going to have one hand in this pocket when you're talking, because you don't know what to do with your hands. If you're really confused, you've got both pockets, you really know what the hell's going on here, right? Put them both here. Because you're worried about your hands. Your hands, you put them by your side and use your face and your voice. People don't even notice where your hands are. Tonight, you didn't notice my hands much when they're down here, because this is happening so much up here, voice and face, it's drawing your attention. So no one cares about what your hands are doing. You don't need to stick them in your pocket or put them behind your back or cover up your groin to protect yourself, from your audience. You can just let them by your side and use voice and face instead. What's the next one?
Pose.
Yeah, we mentioned pause before. Let the audience catch up and absorb the message. And what's the last one?
Posture.
Posture. Now, this is interesting. What does it say? 50-50 weight division, right? You would think, and you can test it for yourselves in a moment, that would be the easiest thing in the world to do. And we teach people, just stand, about shoulder width, comfortable, about, 50-50 weight division. Yeah, I got that. People get up to talk, suddenly, this happens, like this. Or ladies are doing this, All these variations are coming up. The point is, when we stand, about shoulder width apart, stand up straight, we look very professional. If we stand like that, it looks arrogant. And I've seen plenty of speakers stand like that, It looks very arrogant. This looks businesslike, professional, stand straight, look at your audience, and relax. So 50-50 works nicely. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of moments. Think about something you can tell us. We're going to work in pairs. All right, so you won't be up here feeling truckloads of pressure. We're all going to stand up and move over there with our partner, and we're going to think about a story or something we want to explain. Think about what the purpose is you want to do. Your audience is this audience tonight. Now, how am I going to open this? What are some couple of key points I want to make? What's some evidence I can give? How am I going to close it out? Let me give you, how are we going for time here? Put my glasses on, have a quick look. Oh, we're looking good. We've got tons of time. Look at this. Great. Plenty of practice. So let me give you 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes to think about something you want to talk about, get down a couple of key points. You'll only get through a few key points, trust me, with some evidence to back those ideas up. Think about how I'm going to open this, how am I going to close it out. Who has the first question? Look at that. Beautiful. Clarity of presentation.
So we're just
and
presenting in front of
communication.
our partner, we're not presenting in front of the whole team?
No, not yet. We're going to pair up. We're going to pair up and have some partner practice, and then we'll look at that in a little minute. See how we go.
That's a big answer.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So,
Violent.
okay. I think we've pretty much done as much as we need to. Don't stress too much about it. It's just a practice run. What will happen is you'll get a chance to run through it, and then you'll realize, oh, I should have mentioned this point as well, or that's a good evidence I should use, and yeah, that close, I could do something different. You'll work it out as you go as a dry run, all right? So please stand up. How many people here actually looked at their notes during any of those 3 speeches?
I think I did the first one.
Yeah?
You mentioned that I was looking at my notes a little bit.
No, that's really
And then I didn't from then on.
Didn't have to look at them, right? What did you feel was different between the first time you did this and the third time you did it? What was the difference for you? Yeah.
I think from the start you can always memorize your opening and closing, but trying to get enough content in the middle. Like every time I try to think of another thing that I could add in there so that I could try to make it 2 minutes.
So yeah, I've given you an artificial time limit of 2 minutes. So opening and closing, we can work those out, but we don't quite know how many of those points we need to fill up 2 minutes. But as you go through repetition-wise, that gets a bit easier, doesn't it? What else did you notice is different in the first and the third time? Yeah, what else?
Got better.
Yeah.
It got better. How did it get better?
Repetition.
Yeah, but what got better?
The actual presentation.
But what did you feel was better?
All confidence.
You felt more confident the third time than the first time, right? Yeah, that's right. And so what did we talk about here before? And you said it also, preparation, practice. Practice. The first time you did this, you had a sort of vague idea where you're going to go with this story, and then as you did it, it got a little bit more polished, a little bit more easy too, didn't it? Did you notice that as you repeated it, it wasn't so hard, was it? Who was a little bit nervous the first time? Who was nervous the third time? Still a couple of people. If we did a couple more practices, we maybe did 5, that nervousness would completely disappear. Because I'm asking you, if we'd done it with the same partner all the way through, do you think you would have been nervous on the third time? Probably not, right? The same person every time, you would probably not be. But I ask you to change partners to make it fresh every time, particularly the feedback. Did you find the feedback, what was working well, surprising? Were there any things that people said to you, said, oh, I didn't realize that? Anything come up like that? Do you have any, it happened like that? Yeah. Yeah, you found an example, right? Someone said something, you weren't even aware of it. You go, oh, really? Oh, okay, I'll remember that. That's a key point. So getting feedback is very helpful, and particularly, it was very positive feedback, wasn't it? There was no critiquing, you weren't being attacked for you did this or you forgot that. It was all, yeah, this is some strengths that you've got, and this would be great to do it another way. What else did you notice about doing it a number of times? What else occurred to you? What else came up?
I still didn't know what to do with my hands after the first one.
What was he doing with his hands? Where were you putting them?
Always.
You're waving the pattern.
Yeah, then I can add down on the second and third, but I'm still waving my hands around.
Well, that's okay. Waving your hands around is fine, but just don't keep waving around continuously, right? So we can wave them around or we just forget them and bring them back up. But the awareness, those mechanics, those 6 points are really mechanics. Now, that's all they are, mechanics. Now, in Dale Carnegie, we don't put a lot of emphasis on the mechanics because we're more interested in the connect with the audience and the passion for what you want to talk about. This is a bit of an artificial situation. I give you very little time to come up with a topic and then we get a couple of times of practice. So it's pretty hard to get too deep at this level. But you get an idea. Okay, well, when you see your partner doing certain things, oh, that looks better than doing it a different way, or that doesn't look so good. You notice these things, and so you start to realize, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that, or I should do that. That's very helpful. That's why I ask you to, not critique, but to feedback with each other. Because now you're observing your partner from a different perspective. And your own insight grows from that position. Okay. If I ask you to come up here and give it to the whole room, who would be happy to do that?
Him.
All right. It's a little bit of a different proposition, one-on-one, than having a big group. But as you practice more, that becomes less important because as you see, I'm only talking to you individually. I'm not trying to talk to the whole group at the one moment. I'm actually having a one-to-one conversation, one person at a time for around about 6 seconds on each occasion. So when you break it down to one-on-one, it's just like you're doing in your partner work, talking one-on-one. It becomes less overpowering. Even a big group, and as I said, we've got a very big hall. You only pick one person, but the 20 people seated around that person all think you're engaging with them. But that one-on-one thing becomes very individual, very personal. And here's a little hint. If you're talking to an audience and you see people going like this, look at them. You see people going like this, don't look at them. All right? Don't try and convince the people going like this by trying harder. Look for the people going like this and talk to them. Because your confidence will grow by looking at those people. Positive feedback, ignore the people who are looking like this, and you'll maintain your calm all the way through the talk. But if you see people going like this and you think, oh, I've got to try harder, I've got to convince them, forget that.
What if all of them do that?
You've got a major problem. In that case, I would just keep going with all of them because they're all shaking their head. You might want to rewrite that speech. We'll think about the messaging here. But that's pretty rare. But I remember one occasion I was talking about an audience of 100 salespeople. I was giving the talk in Japanese. I still remember halfway down, left side, one guy, an audience of 100 people, one guy, for the entire speech he was like this. It was an hour speech. At the end of my speech, the guy jumped out of his seat and was coming up to the stage where I was. I thought he was going to hit me. And I couldn't believe it. He said to me in Japanese, "That was fantastic. Thank you very much. That was great." But through that entire speech, his facial expression was so negative. And that's when I realized that people who are thinking may be portraying something on their face which is not representative of how they're feeling. Right? So don't necessarily be thrown by people having a very, quizzical, skeptical look on their face. They may just be thinking deeply about what you're saying, but look for the people who are nodding. That's always going to work well. Do you have any questions for me regarding anything we've spoken about tonight or anything else regarding giving public speeches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of openings and closings, are there places you could suggest that? Because I've noticed that some of mine start really well. And then when I assume that they're going to start well, actually they don't. And then if it doesn't start well, all of a sudden I'm thinking, shit, that didn't start well. I've got another speech. I've got the entire speech to go through now.
Right.
What's the best way to come up with it? Because that goes along with everything. It goes along with understanding the audience and knowing what they might want to hear,
Yep.
knowing what you want to say.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's, if you could talk a little bit about that, it's probably the most important part of it.
Well, at the opening, your point is, the question is, when you're giving your speech, the opening is a critical part. What happens if that part doesn't seem to resonate with the audience? And you thought this is going to be a great opening and it's a dud, what happens? What do you do about that type of situation, basically? Right?
Well, how do you prepare for it?
Well, how do you prepare for it? Well, you're never going to know exactly with an audience in terms of preparation. You can determine what your topic is going to be, what your goal is going to be, what your audience analysis is going to be, and prepare for that. But it may not go according to plan. You can never anticipate exactly. The point there is to have point evidence, strong logical flow, and keep going with it, because they may be skeptical and not warmed up yet. They may be totally convinced that something else is more important to think about than listening to you, and be thinking about that thing, or be tied up in some other activities that are going on before they got there, or they might have out their phones and they're going, what's happening on my email, LinkedIn, what's happening here, oh yeah, that's an interesting article on Facebook, oh, I didn't know that. And you've lost them, right, for that moment. That will happen. In this age, expecting to have 100% attention in your audience is a hard ask. But your job, keep going. Not everybody will be like that, and maybe not everyone will be like that all the way through your talk. And particularly, if you're speaking in a foreign language, like speaking in Japanese, that can be very tough sometimes. You start and you think, I'll prepare this well, and the audience is also like, no expression, tough. Keep going. And then at the end you find you warm them up. You'll find points somewhere along the line to get their interest. Have good variety in the way you deliver it, and have energy and have passion for it. Because if you look like you're defeated, they'll give up on you. Even if you didn't think that went well, keep going. Something will resonate somewhere. It will come back. And you'll find also, sometimes you'll think that this opening is a very good one, and for one audience it is, for another audience it's not. Very hard to anticipate that. And openings are difficult. They are difficult. But the opening only has one objective. It is to break their concentration from everything that's happened before they got in that room to hear the rest of your talk. That's the only objective. The opening is not there to convince them. It is not there to make any special point. It is just have a break between the clutter that's in their mind and what you're going to go into. So it should only be short anyway. And once you get into the meat of what you're talking about, if that has value, they will be listening to you. If you've done a good audience analysis and you have a good delivery, they will follow you all the way through. So don't fret too much about the opening. It's just a break between before and your speech. Where's the next question? All good? Okay. Well, there's some things to work on. I'd slip that little blue card into your wallet or your purse. Before you give your next talk, just whip it out and remind yourself, oh yeah, there's some things I should think about. And you've got your plan, a very simple plan. But we have a much more complicated training on this. It's called High Impact Presentations. It's 2 days. We video everything. You have 2 instructors. We go through the full works. That's a very high level, powerful program. We do that in Japanese, do that in English. Today is more an introductory level, some of the basics, some of the simple things to think about, just to give you a little bit more confidence to talk. Other thing I'll leave you with is practice. And if you can practice with a partner and you tell the partner, I want you to give me some feedback. What sort of feedback are you going to ask for?
2 types.
Yeah, what are they?
The positive and how I can improve.
Yeah. Tell me what's good about this that I'm doing that I may not be aware of, and tell me how I can make it better. If you tell your partner to do that, things will go very smoothly. Well, thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you for your participation.